Another year, another season in the books, another one-and-done playoff exit from Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But hey, what's new? Nothing at all. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, here to give my thoughts and reactions to the NFL Saturday Wildcard round matchups. We're going to start off by discussing the Steelers' disappointing loss to the Ravens. What's in store for Mike Tomlin's future in Pittsburgh? How are they going to address their lingering quarterback woes? And what this win means for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Then we're going to transition to discussing the Chargers getting taken off the face of the earth by the Houston Texans. They got absolutely smothered to pieces. Before we dive into it, if you are a diehard football fan, you live, eat, breathe, and sleep football, this is the right place for you. Make sure that you're subscribed, that you got post notifications turned on so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. And let's dive into it. So once again, the Steelers come up short in the playoffs. They are early first round exit. I'm not surprised that this game went the way that it did. The Ravens have not only the more superior team talent-wise, but they also have the better quarterback, which is why I don't understand why people bother wasting their time and energy calling for Mike Tomlin to get fired. He has a no-trade clause in his contract. He also has a pretty huge buyout. Mike Tomlin isn't going anywhere unless he wants to go somewhere else, and I doubt that he wants to change the scenery. So Steeler fans, unless you are willing to not watch another snap of Steelers football as long as Mike Tomlin remains the head coach, you're just stuck with him for the foreseeable future. But the big picture for Pittsburgh is going to be, how do they plan to address the quarterback position? Because ever since Ben Roethlisberger hung up the cleats, it's been pretty much a merry-go-round at the quarterback position, from Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph. Now you got Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. What people have to understand about the Steelers this year is that this team still relatively overachieved when you think of the expectations that the media had going in for this team. You know, most people thought that this was going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing season. And yeah, it's nice to get into the playoffs, but, you know, that's kind of the downside about Mike Tomlin. He's good enough that you're not going to be picking high enough in the draft to get a franchise quarterback, and then you're not that big of a threat come playoff time to really make any noise and to make a deep playoff run. So now the Steelers are in a position where you got to find a long-term solution at quarterback. It has to be somebody young. You can't keep kicking the tires on these old aging veterans like Russell Wilson. You can't be trying to fix up these reclamation projects like Justin Fields. And the Steelers had the cheapest quarterback room in the NFL this season, and they got what they paid for. When you go cheap, you get cheap results. Justin Fields, he was good enough to lead the Steelers to a 4-2 record on top of the AFC North. Then Tomlin makes a decision to pivot to Russell Wilson, and they get a little bit of a spark. And then once they got into the last month of the season, when the schedule really ramped up in this level of difficulty, that's when everything just started to go left. And like always, once Mike Tomlin gets the 9-10 wins, this team goes on vacation. At this point, the Steelers have to try to trade up to the top 3 of this upcoming draft so they can put themselves in position to either get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. I know the Steelers don't really have a lengthy history of trading up in the draft, but you have to at this point, because in free agency, who out there is a decent solution to solving the Steelers' lingering woes at quarterback? Are you going to go with Aaron Rodgers? Once again, another aging quarterback who's even much older than Russell Wilson. You definitely can't bring Russ back. I mean, I've seen enough out of Russell Wilson. The dude only has 2 plays in his repertoire, either throwing moon balls downfield to George Pickens or throwing checkdowns to the running backs. That's about it. The Russell Wilson offense does not equate to winning football, or at least sustainable winning football. And then Justin Fields, he's in the 5th year of being a pro, and we still are only talking about his potential, what he could be. If we don't know what you are at this point, there's no reason to roll the dice, and the Steelers once again have to go through another season of up and down quarterback play. If Justin Fields showed that he really was the dude, Mike Tomlin would have never pivoted to Russell Wilson. The Steelers need to try to position themselves to land either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders in the draft this offseason. If the Browns are willing to listen to trade offers, the trade up for the 2nd overall pick, the Steelers definitely should be on the phone trying to put themselves in position to get that pick, because you've went through all avenues possible to try to find a decent replacement for Big Ben Roethlisberger, and you've been unsuccessful at doing that. And the problem with Mike Tomlin is that he's such a good coach that you're going to be good enough to where you're not going to be in position to draft a high-end quarterback unless you trade up for one, and you're not a threat in the playoffs, so you're not going to make a Super Bowl run. So at this point, the Steelers are better off trying to get a younger quarterback in there. If you can't get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, see what the Minnesota Vikings are going to do with Sam Darnold. If they are going to let him hit free agency, then you need to pay whatever it takes to get him playing in that black and gold uniform. But if they re-sign Sam Darnold, then see what they want for J.J. McCarthy. I think it's worth giving up a 1st-round pick for J.J. McCarthy. The upside is there. We don't really know how good he is, but at this point, you got to do something, and it has to be a younger quarterback. You just can't keep coming out with a guy like Russell Wilson and expect to compete in the division that's home to 2 of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. Tonight, the difference in this game was not just the talent discrepancy, but the fact that Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in the NFL, and the Steelers, no matter what they tried to do defensively, they just couldn't find a way to get 8 on the ground and to slow down this Ravens offense that was without their best wide receiver. And moving forward for the Baltimore Ravens, this game isn't really anything that shows us nothing that we didn't already know about Lamar Jackson before. We know that Lamar Jackson can win against inferior competition like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I expected this game to be completely one-sided, and that's exactly what it was. So for the folks on social media that are taking victory laps, saying that, yeah, Lamar Jackson can win the playoffs, Lamar didn't really prove anything, because this wasn't really a test. If anything, the Ravens got a 1st-round bye pretty much. There was no chance in hell the Steelers had at winning this game. That's why I was trying to tell Steeler fans, but they wanted to call me a hater. They wanted to say that I'm not a true fan. The Ravens have one of the most talented rosters top to bottom in the NFL. It was expected for them to roll the Steelers and for this to be an easy, decisive win. Now, the Steelers in the second half, they did try to make it a little bit interesting, but ultimately the Ravens just had too much juice for them. The Ravens' true test begins in the 2nd round. Either they're going to be playing the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs. Either way, that's when we really are going to find out just what Lamar Jackson is made of. I think he very well has locked up his 3rd ever MVP award. And I believe, despite being a Steelers fan, that Lamar Jackson is the most talented quarterback that ever touched a football. Lamar is the equivalent to when, if you used to play Madden and used to go to create a player, you picked the quarterback position and you maxed out his stats with 99 speed, 99 throw power, 99 accuracy. That's what Lamar Jackson is. And the way that the Ravens were using him tonight, really effective on the ground. They were asking him to carry the ball a good amount, more than what they've done throughout the regular season. If they can continue this level of aggressiveness with Lamar on the ground, plus he's killing teams through the air, the Ravens have a very good chance to not only keep the Chiefs from three-peating, but to also end up hoisting that Lombardi trophy. The only thing keeping Lamar Jackson from being in that top 5 quarterback conversation is the fact that he doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. This defense is playing their best football at the right time of the year. I can trust this defense now to stop Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or whoever else they have to face throughout the postseason. You know, for Lamar now, you just can't try to crown him for winning a wild card game. This is the bare minimum. This is the bare minimum for him. The expectations are a lot higher. He's going to be defined. The Ravens season is going to be defined based off what they can do from this point out, and it starts next week with you most likely having to play the Buffalo Bills. And I like you to win that game. And I possibly like you to beat Kansas City. Now let's transition to the Los Angeles Chargers getting absolutely splattered by the Houston Texans on the road. 32-12 was the final score. I did not expect this game to go the way that it did. The Los Angeles Chargers offensively, they just couldn't get anything going. If it wasn't for the few turnovers that they were fortunate enough to come away with early, they wouldn't have put too much of anything on the scoreboard. Justin Herbert, he looked overrated today. He threw 4 interceptions. I know all of them weren't on him, but he didn't have a good game. The offense didn't have a good game. Neither the offensive line. It seemed like every time Justin Herbert dropped back the pass, he was getting crucified back there. And the Chargers have had a pretty good offensive line this year, one of the better ones in the NFL. So for the Houston Texans pass rush to just dominate the way that they did was really shocking to me. And the Texans do have a good pass rush. I'm not trying to say this as me being surprised at how good the Texans pass rush is, but I'm surprised that the Chargers offensive line looked as bad as what it did, because this unit has been pretty solid for the entirety of the regular season. And when you got Greg Roman as your offensive coordinator and you're put in a position where you got to go pass heavy to get back into the game, you might as well already just wave the white flag and just quit, because you got no chance at winning. Everybody likes to ask, why does Greg Roman continue to get offensive coordinator gigs? Well, because if you hire Greg Roman, you're guaranteed to have nothing worse than a top 5 rushing attack. Everywhere Greg Roman goes, he produces elite rushing offenses. But the problem with him is that his passing concepts are really elementary, really easy to defend. And unless you have high-level talent at wide receiver, you're really not going to get too much production out of the passing offense with Greg Roman as your offensive coordinator. But despite how disappointing this game was for the Chargers, it still doesn't demean how successful of a first season this was for Jim Harbaugh and company. This was a team that came into this season with a lot of limitations due to their cap situation. You didn't really have that good of a roster to begin with. Your best players were Ladd McConkey, J.K. Dobbins, who definitely should be in the conversation for comeback player of the year, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, and Khalil Mack. And then you had a few young cornerbacks step up for you as well. So when the Chargers are able to get a few more high-quality players in via the draft, and they're able to make some marquee free agency signings, I expect this team, sooner rather than later, to be competing for not just the AFC West title with the Kansas City Chiefs, but to eventually be in the Super Bowl conversation. Justin Herbert, everybody's getting their takes off about him being overrated due to how poorly he played, but I still believe that he is still an elite quarterback. He's good enough to win a Super Bowl. It's just that he hasn't had his moment yet, and eventually that's going to come. Once you get into the playoffs, it doesn't matter how good of a coaching staff you have. It doesn't matter if you have one of the best football coaches of the past decade in Jim Harbaugh, because the team that you're lining up against on their sideline, they have a head coach that's just as good as yours, and a team that's just as good, if not better than what you have. And the Texans offensively, I still wasn't really that impressed outside of CJ Stroud making some really good plays. He had one play where he fumbled the football. He gets control of it, and he just throws an absolute seed in the middle of the field on the run to Xavier Hutchinson. And after he made that play, that's when the momentum of this game started to shift in the Houston Texans' favor. And then this defense, I mean, holy crap, man. Not only do they have a great pass rush, but their secondary is shut down. You got Derek Stingley, who's an all-pro. He should be in a conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. You cannot name another cornerback that's been as good as Derek Stingley has this year. Probably outside of Patrick Surtain, that's about it. Kamari Lassiter, the rookie that they drafted out of Georgia, he's been a stud as well. And in spite of them not having Jalen Petrie, I mean, he's a dog. If you don't know who Jalen Petrie is, go do your research on him. He easily is one of the top 3, top 5 safeties in the game with how versatile he is. He can play the slot. He can play safety. He's just a jack of all trades. And for them to not have him in this secondary to still play at the level that it is really scary. And I saw Brett Coleman put out a tweet earlier about how, with how good the Texans are defensively right now, they do have the potential to maybe pull an upset against Kansas City. Because the last time they played Kansas City, you know, it kind of was a little bit one-sided, but this defense has played well all season long, and they're playing great football at the right time. This is the best performance that this defense has had all season long, even though they went up against a really limited Chargers team. You got a Chiefs team that has kind of struggled. They are more healthier now than what they've been in years past or in the previous weeks, with Hollywood Brown fully healthy. And then you got to see D-Hop with a week off. Who knows how good he's going to look, along with Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy. But this is a defense that is Super Bowl caliber. And if CJ Stroud can continue to sustain the level of play next week like he did in this game today, we definitely could see the Texans making somewhat of a Cinderella run. Maybe they could do what the Tennessee Titans did a few years ago when they had Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. They got hot late, and they carried that momentum all throughout the playoffs. So for the Houston Texans, man, I wouldn't want to play you no matter if you're the Bills, the Chiefs, or whoever, man, because you look way better than what you did during the regular season. Normally, when you have a team that ends up finishing the regular season cold, they end up going one and done in the playoffs. I thought that the Texans and the Steelers were both going to be easy one and done teams, but the Texans were the team that was able to somewhat overcome their limitations, that being the offensive line, because the offensive line still didn't have a good performance, but they were able to make plays in spite of that. Bobby Stork, their offensive coordinator, was able to make some adjustments, got the ball out fast, out of C.J. Stroud's hands, and they were able to get it into Nico Collins' hands as much as possible. I mean, he had a monster night. It's just for the Los Angeles Chargers, you ran into a buzzsaw. There was no way that you were going to be able to hang around in this game if you couldn't get the run game established. That's the identity of Jim Harbaugh's teams. They want to be physical. They want to control the line of scrimmage, and they want to run the ball down your throat. And when you can't execute those 3 keys, then you end up losing. And when the Chargers get more talent, like you already got Lat McConkey, you know, you just need a few more pieces and you'll be right up there. You already know that Jim Harbaugh is an incredible coach. He wins everywhere that he goes. But the Houston Texans, man, this looked like the team I thought we would see coming into this year, because some of y'all probably don't remember this, but the Texans were my pick to win the AFC before the season started. I had them making it to the Super Bowl going up against the Green Bay Packers. Now, although they don't have Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, if their offensive line can play better and they can somehow just find a way to put it all together in the divisional round, they definitely could be a sneaky team that nobody could see coming, playing for the right to make it to the Super Bowl. Every once in a while, there's a team that wins the AFC that nobody really expected to before the season started. Remember a few years ago in 2021, 2022, the Cincinnati Bengals shocked us all, and they made it to the Super Bowl despite having the worst offensive line to ever appear in the Super Bowl in the modern Super Bowl era. You know, if Joe Burrow can do it, CJ Stroud definitely can, because he was balling out there. This is Probably one of CJ Stroud's best performances that I've seen him have since the first 2 months of the season. You know, he was balling out, especially with what he was doing on the ground. He was looking a little bit Lamar-ish like, you know, not like Lamar, but you know, he had a little bit of wiggle. He was making a few guys miss. Like, he was really doing a lot of damage on the ground. CJ Stroud just had a mentality that he wasn't going to lose this game, and he was going to do all he could to help carry a Houston Texans offense that has been really limited due to their lackluster offensive line play. But these are my thoughts and reactions to the NFL Saturday wildcard round matchups. Leave your thoughts on these games in the comment section down below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcasting platforms, make sure that you give us a 5-star review. You share the episode with your friends, family members, and acquaintances if you enjoy. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.